Kingdom Hearts occupies a strange place in action game history. Anecdotally speaking, whenever I ask someone if they remember playing it, they'll praise the story and art direction, but admit that they prefer the feel of the sequel. And why not? It's snappier, more responsive, and the animation is, well, there's more of it. Not only does the player character have more diverse options to combo enemies, but those enemies seem more responsive, getting stunned and breaking free in a reliable manner that speedrunners and casual players alike seem to prefer. If the first game has one major flaw, it's readability. Sometimes your finishing move sends enemies flying, sometimes they shrug it off and punish you for trying. But at the end of a frustrating learning curve is a game with a unique flow, a system of not only attacks and defense, but fully three-dimensional movement that makes certain battles a joy to replay. And no one can help us better understand the fundamental nature of this game's challenge and satisfaction than Riku. So, I did 3 separate replays of the game with 3 different builds, and my following observations are focused on core mechanics as they relate to this one NPC. Keep in mind that your experience may vary depending on how you approach the game. Most people notice 2 things about 3D action games from Japan. Button mashing solves most problems, and the best parts are the fights against a stock shonen rival character. Kingdom Hearts is no exception, but it's also an RPG. So instead of testing your reaction time and finesse with animation cancels, battles with Riku are a gestalt of story, character build, action, and platforming. Okay, the platforming might have gone a little too far in some places, but the first battle happens 10 minutes into the game. You're sent to pick up an item, and there he is. You could just ignore him. But after the tutorial battles, you're feeling confident, you're mashing the attack button, and oh god, what's happening? Any modern Souls game player likely finds this quaint. A counterattack that gives you 2 full seconds to react. Child's play. And yes, once you've gotten acclimated, Riku's first encounter is nothing fancy, but the beginning of the game is about learning basic actions. And at the core of Kingdom Hearts is the dreaded F word. So what do people mean when they say floaty? In short, it means that jumping takes longer than in comparable games. And jumping isn't just a single action. It's really more like 4 separate parts: startup, hang time, recovery, and aerial attacks. Most games in this 3D anime swords club are much faster than this and have other mechanics to flesh out each interaction. But those games would come later, and Square's sources of inspiration were, well, their own work, mixed with a healthy dose of Mario 64. And like Mario, jumping is the heart of this game. Sure, the platforming incorporated into the level design feels like rusty nails on a chalkboard compared to Mario, but in combat, jumping shines. Look at the basic attack combo. On the ground, Sora does 3 hits. Land the first, you'll nearly always get the rest. In the air, it's also a 3-hit chain, but you'll quickly notice this happening. So what gives? Well, the jump arc is long enough that you have to pay attention to the position of your target relative to your character and time your swings accordingly. Almost no game in this genre does this anymore. Air combos usually freeze both characters in place until they're finished. This learning curve is steeper, but the reward is better, because hit stun is long enough that properly timed air combos and jumps will either combo enemies to death or stun them long enough for you to reposition before they retaliate. So, how does this work with Riku? He starts with these short-range sword attacks. They're easy to avoid, but require increasingly tight timing for you to punish. Just blocking and responding with a ground combo works at first, but landing the finisher makes him counterattack. And unlike that early game fight, this counter is guaranteed to hit you if you do your finisher on the ground. So what about air combos? Sora's air combo moves him forward, and the last hit spins in a tight horizontal radius. Too early, and the finisher goes over his head. Too late, and you land before it comes out. This turns the interaction into 4 distinct beats that you can feel each of, while other games tend to have 1 beat followed by air mashing. Even just jumping has those distinct moments without attacking. You start by feeling him out, learning the timing, and it feels like an open-ended proposition. His quick dashes mean that you have to drift forward precisely and land just close enough to get the opening. It's even appropriate for the story. Instead of brutalizing your friend with explosion or guard break, you're still just guys butting heads and sparring like the good old days before everything went wrong. Right? Oh god, Sora, stop, he's already dead. So, if you're playing this game in the current year, you're probably playing this version, which added several new abilities to the game and changed the flow of combat significantly. Animation might be a matter of personal preference, but the important thing is, these new mechanics enter the game as rewards for leveling up. The old attacks aren't patched out, but shifted to the role of early game tools that get upgraded for the harder late game challenges. But like many games which add new tools without altering the old challenges, these can trivialize certain parts of the game. Like, here's my average level character on normal difficulty facing a boss which should be a climactic challenge. These moves can and will mash him to death. But this is where context matters. Like a typical RPG, the game presents 3 options at the beginning to facilitate different playstyles, but unlike many examples, the 3 options here don't just give you statistical advantages to options that you can then freely swap between at will. These choices actually subdivide Sora's moveset drastically enough that most players can complete the game without ever seeing multiple moves that would change the dynamic of combat. This runs the risk of alienating new players completely, but earning the undying love of those who stay. Can you imagine getting 5 hours into Dark Souls and reading, "You have learned to block," or halfway through Devil May Cry before learning Stinger, or learning the parry late into any action game of this decade? It's delayed gratification, and it may not be everyone's preference, but it's the kind of restraint that makes this game feel like a true melding of RPG progression and immediate action that remains so rare. The real fun in Kingdom Hearts isn't the individual battles, it's the experimentation across the whole playthrough. With so many keyblades, magics, armors, elixirs, abilities, and movement options to collect, the question is not whether you can beat the baby game for babies, but how you can beat it. Cranking up the difficulty isn't just a shifting of the margin for error. It means certain fights will brick wall you unless you have the right tools. Certain levels can be completed early or skipped entirely, but each have their own unique opportunity costs. And you feel the impact of your choices across a variety of boss fights, but there's just something about Riku. If other action games give you a headache, the slower tempo here might help you actually enjoy a challenge run. There are times when just ignoring a major game mechanic can make a game feel incomplete, but I believe that simply not choosing the sword and fighting bosses without slapshot or blitz still provides a great deal of depth. For example, how can you deal with Riku's counterattack? Most bosses in this escape escape your mashing by pushing you away or pushing themselves away. Riku smacks you in the face, but that's where it gets interesting. Instead of a dedicated parrying button that instantly blocks all damage and gives your enemies a concussion, parrying here is awkward and confusing, but ultimately rewarding. Sora's ground and air attacks don't just put a hitbox in front of him the instant the button is pressed. He swings in 3 different directions. A quick side swipe if you're right next to an enemy, a slow lunge if you attack from further away, and this long arcing overhead in the air. The size of these attacks are generous. If your blade overlaps with any part of an enemy attack, you'll get this parrying animation and take no damage, even if the enemy keeps moving through it. Some attacks even give you experience points to encourage it. In a first playthrough, you're likely to get this all the time and not know why. You could argue it's rewarding mindless play, rolling offense and defense into one button. But like everything else in this game, cranking up the difficulty to insane level forces you to teach yourself those nuances. So, how does parrying Riku work?
Here it comes!
Parrying his two main attacks stuns him and gives you an opening, but you get stunned and pushed back, so you're encouraged to get as close in on him as possible, narrowing your window to react, but rewarding you for taking the risk. And after he gets hit 4 times, Riku will always respond with a counterattack. If you try to parry that with a normal attack, you'll bounce right off. But if you do a finisher, he'll take the damage, and you'll be safe to press the offensive. And in fact, you can cheese your way through the entire fight doing this. Yes, by counting the hits, you can time your combo finisher to parry his counter, then start a new combo, rinse and repeat until he dies. Like a 0 to death combo in a 2D fighting game, the precision required means that you're unlikely to stumble upon this by accident, and like a fighting game combo, it's a multi-stage interaction where every step that you get right rewards you. The more you box him into this loop, the less time you spend worrying about him doing anything else. Oh yeah, what else does he do?
Now witness true power!
Instead of a whole new move set halfway through the fight, his moves gain additional properties. Dash attack now launches this big projectile, so jumping it is riskier, but you can smack it back at him, then react quickly enough to create a new opening. His overhead swing now launches these shockwaves, just in case you were drifting too slowly or rolling sideways at the safest angle. And his dive bomb now makes an exploding minefield that you have to glide from the peak of your jump to avoid getting clipped. But when you see him power up, he's a sitting duck. Part of the tension here comes from seeing Riku start to glow, running in for a combo, then scrambling away before he blasts through you. Then, after about 10 of his boosted attacks, he'll power down, and you get a break. But instead of relaxing during this window, you're encouraged to pick up the pace before he powers up again. And finally, his big finishing move.
Open your hearts to darkness!
It's a bit of a letdown. It does look cool, but once you realize you can just hold the glide button, you're safe. But that's not all. After you avoid Dark Aura, what do you think he does?
Open your hearts to darkness!
The topic of artificial intelligence exhausts me to think about at this point, but it's this battle that made me appreciate how games can succeed with simple, meaningful programming. Riku is predictable, but he's animated with the careful touch of thoughtful developers. His backstep moves him just perfectly out of your reach, like he remembers all those childhood sword fights. His overhead is so hot-headed that he'll leave his back open, and even his counterattack spins just slowly enough that attacking him from above isn't enough. You still have to look for that sweet spot. I also love Kingdom Hearts 2, but most fights in that game feel like they're focused on timing, with giant hitboxes that make jumping less practical than timing your invincible moves. And that's fun in a totally unique way, but I hope this analysis has proven that a slow tempo can still be action-packed. So long, Dark Riku. Wait, what do you mean he came back? But he's right over there. No, oh wait, not this again.